wars. Who's excited for the race wars, guys? Who's ready?
Hostility between races is exploding online right now.
It is. Up that baby. Make that baby brainless or something for a while. That's what happens when you grow up with racist parents.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Everyone's tired, everyone's overwhelmed, and we're all exhausted from watching the world fall apart, and most of us don't know what to do with the tension anymore. Without any real solutions, the chaos hasn't just continued, it's gotten louder and uglier.
Is she just spamming it?
Come to realize that we're all about to wake up in a very different world soon, and this moment right now marks the tipping point. So what's really going on underneath all of this outrage? And more importantly, before it's too late, how can Christians step into the chaos without becoming part of the problem? To understand what's really happening, we have to look at the two events that everyone's reacting to and why they've become a tipping point for so many Americans. A few weeks ago, you probably heard the story about a kid named Austin Metcalf who was fatally stabbed at a track meet by another teen named Carmelo Anthony. And despite Austin's dad saying that this wasn't about race and begged for people not to turn this into a race war,
it probably wasn't. Realistically, their conflict was probably just Carmelo being an asshole. Because Carmelo got in other problems at school, too. I think Carmelo was just a retard asshole. Like, that was it. Like, it didn't have anything to do with race.
I just have one thing to say on behalf of the black community. We don't care. We don't care, okay? The same way you don't care about Trayvon Martin, yeah. And I'll say that with my whole heart. We don't care.
I think that's also a really good point, too, is that the way that Trayvon Martin was portrayed and George Zimmerman was portrayed, I think the media has done a very good job at creating the highest degree of, like, racial separation that we've ever had.
So profound that a black student can stab an unarmed white teenager.
But this was only the start. Things got much worse as soon as this happened. Carmelo's family set up a fundraiser, which quickly raised nearly $600,000, which left people online split and enraged. Those who defended him making the money claimed that the stabbing could have been a self-defense and that the money was raised so that Carmelo could have a fair trial, while those who are opposed to him raising money claimed that the money was raised as a way of celebrating a crime against the white kid and essentially condoning murder. So
the problem with that was, like, a lot of the comments were about Carmelo Anthony being targeted and arrested because he was black. I think that was really the issue that people had with it, is that there was a degree of almost like, you know, just categorical hand-waving of Carmelo Anthony's behavior because he was black. And you could see that in the comments of the donations. And I think that's what really radicalized people about it. And then also the other big issue with it was that the guy that effectively attached himself to the Carmelo Anthony case had a rap sheet that would have gotten him 5 stars in Grand Theft Auto. This guy shouldn't even be out of jail. Like, he beat up a or he had, like, a Grand Theft Auto charges, multiple theft charges. Like, this guy was a complete piece of shit, right? And, like, he was basically leading the charge in advocacy of Carmelo Anthony, right? And I think that's what really also radicalized people as well.
His tensions were already super high, but they got even worse after this happened. Just last week, a video went viral showing a white woman named Shiloh Kendricks at a park in Minnesota allegedly calling a 5-year-old black autistic child the N-word. And when asked why she said it, she defended her words.
The child? Did you call the child the N-word? It is my own business. You call him a Okay, why don't you have
I never even watched this video.
Okay. All right, that's what you say. A little kid, you call him a the little child?
But that's not even where things went crazy. This was the start of the tipping point. Hendricks launched a crowdfunding campaign, doubling down on her statement, and claimed that she and her family were facing threats and needed help relocating. And the fundraiser skyrocketed, raising over $700,000 in just days, surpassing the amount that was raised for Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah, so this would have never happened if the Carmelo Anthony GoFundMe didn't happen. Like, this would have never even existed. It would have never happened. This was a direct response.
Reporters say that the fundraiser isn't about what she said, but about pushing back on cancel culture, defending free speech, and in defiance of the white guilt narrative. While those who were opposed to her raising money are claiming that the reason why she got so much support is because she's racist, and that this is essentially about people wanting to condone racism.
Both sides are right. That's the truth. Both sides of this are right.
This went down, a digital war has exploded on platforms like X, with so many people saying absolutely horrific things about the other race. And this isn't just one or two people saying things like this. Literally thousands of people have been openly calling for violence or hatred, or retweeting statements of violence and hatred towards the other race. As calls for segregation keep continuing to stack up more and more each day.
I think the reason why this started to happen is actually because of BLM and the riots in 2020. And the fact that the government didn't immediately shut them down. And I think that because of that, it gave people the mindset that because it was like a BLM riot and it was a racially coded like thing, that it was okay for these people to behave this way. And it radicalized a lot of people. And it's kind of like, do you remember what I was saying earlier today about how like the big problem in, I think, Europe, and not all of Europe, but the countries that are having these issues like France and the UK, with like these Muslim migrant gangs, is not that they're happening, it's that the government turns a blind eye to it and they don't enforce the law in a unilateral way. And I think this is the exact same problem that happened in the US with BLM, is that if the BLM riots had happened and immediately they were shut down by the National Guard or some other variation of that, I don't think that we would have seen this type of escalation that would have happened. But the problem is that you could see these riots happening and everybody could watch it happening, where they're burning down businesses that have nothing to do with this. They're, you know, like stealing from stores. And also, like, when I say they, I'm not talking about black people, because there are tons of white people that were participating in this as well, and Latino people and everybody, right? This wasn't a, you know, like, it wasn't even really a war. It was just all of these people getting together and doing this. But they were doing it for this cause, and the cause was, of course, attached to a race, which was obviously black people, right? And so this happens, and then you have everybody freaking out and getting really mad about it, because they see the obvious injustice of, you know, houses being destroyed, businesses being burned down, cars getting, you know, looted, stores being completely stolen, everything stolen out of the store. And nothing happened, and the people that were calling it out were almost being portrayed as racist. And I think that that radicalized people more than any KKK rally ever could. And I think it did so to a magnitude of like 10,000 times more. And I think that almost all of the problems that we have, I think they date back to like two different points. I think that woman saying the Trayvon Martin case, I think that was one really big point. And I think the second point was BLM. It was the selective reporting and the biased reporting of interracial violence between, you know, white and black people in the 2010s. And then the crescendo of that, the climax of that, was those riots in 2010. And now you're seeing a huge like reactions to OJ verdict. The fact is, I'm 34. I don't remember that very well. So you could be right, but this is my frame of reference based off of like my lifespan. What about the injustice? Do black people still suffer to this day? Do people not see that part? Well, like, which injustice do you mean, right? So, like, are you talking about, like, for example, like, I don't know, like, I think that if you're talking about, like, any sort of, like, structural, like, injustice that a black person is dealing with, because, and here's the thing, right, and this is very important to keep in mind, is that I do think that there are elements of racism that are prevalent, and I do think that sometimes, you know, black people do get treated worse by police by the nature of the color of their skin. I think this happens. I think it does happen. But the problem is that there are so many bad actors that are on both sides that are trying to pretend like it always happens, and there's other people trying to pretend like it never happens. And so you have two sides of people that are intentionally dishonest, that are misrepresenting a legitimate problem, and it makes everybody worse. It makes everything worse. I think that black people are at a number of like kind of cultural disadvantages. I think that generational wealth is probably the best example that I can use of it. That's the most material that I can make an argument for. But it's very hard to have honest conversations about these things because the conversations are dominated by dishonest people. And I find it to be very disappointing. Where's my generational wealth? I mean, most people don't have generational wealth. But on average, don't you think slavery and segregation would have made it a lot harder for black families to have generational wealth? Like, can't both things be true? Why can't you just acknowledge this obvious reality? Like, I mean, of course. Like, what are we talking about? Like, why? 100 years ago? Yeah, exactly. We don't care. It's not about whether you care or not. It's about whether it happened or not and whether it's real. acknowledging that something is real is always a good thing than denying the truth. Take the L, bro. That's not the point. It's not an L. This is a fact. It's just an objective fact. And I can give other examples of this too. Like, I can give examples about how people who aren't in English-speaking countries that come here and they didn't have access to education, this is just the truth. And I'm not saying that, like, I'm not, like, the problem why people get so defensive about this is because, you know, like, I say something like this and they're like, oh, okay, so you just want reparations. No, I never even said that. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying this. Nobody's trying to push for that at all. I think that it's important to accurately understand where things are and to understand how we got here. That's it. And if you can't do that, you can, and also you can never solve problems if you don't know how they happened.
Become more and more apparent that these events are more than just controversies. They become symbols of something much deeper and much more dangerous to our future. These events are about what they triggered in all of us. I mean, just take a listen to what both sides of the debate are saying now.
So the way to fight back against essentially this anti-white hatred that's been systemically, you know, ingrained in U.S. society is with white unity. And
underneath what's being said, what we're really seeing is that both sides feel like their experiences are being dismissed. Both feel under attack. And what we're left with now is race baiting from both directions. Identity politics on both sides.
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. Do you remember how I said years ago that, like, if people keep playing identity politics, white people will start playing identity politics again? Well, here it is. Now it's happening.
Contest over who's the greater victim, as everyone claims systemic oppression against their group. And by the way, I'm sure both sides would be more than eager to explain why their claims are legit and the other side's isn't, but to say that would be to miss my point. Because my point is this. What I've come to realize is that it's easier to recognize genuine problems or even misdiagnosed problems when we're on the receiving end of it. Of course, there's exceptions, but our personal experiences and history shape how we view the world and what we notice. And if we're not the target, we easily miss those subtle things that others might see every day. This is why most non-Christians don't see prejudice against Christians.
I think that there is prejudice against Christians, and I think that it's obvious that in media, it's much more socially acceptable to make fun of Christianity and to demonize and delegitimize and degrade Christianity in comparison to other religions. It's obvious. If you can't see that, you're just being dishonest.
Jewish people on the left, like Ethan Klein and David Pakman, were quick to call out what they perceived as anti-Semitism, while the rest of their non-Jewish group dismissed it as non-existent. It's why women on the right have called out what they see as misogyny coming from those like Andrew Tate. Now, the point is not whether or not these people are right, but how people within certain groups may be sensitive to what they perceive as attacks coming from the outside, while dismissing it when others claim the same thing.
Exactly.
It's happening all across the board, and it's fueling a dangerous pattern where everybody's experiences feel invalidated, which makes everything worse.
Yep.
The end result of both sides feeling ignored is that we're locked in a cycle of retaliation.
Sorry, but just to be clear, you just said to me you use the N-word regularly. In what context? Do you use it with black people?
Yes, if it's appropriate.
When would it be appropriate?
Anytime I feel like it.
So you're an unashamed racist.
Correct.
Every reaction becomes fuel for the next.
I think that the focus around using the N-word is like a really big misdirection. And it's like a word, like obviously, like, I mean, it's not a polite thing to do to call somebody the N-word, right? Obviously, it's bad to do that. But at the same time, the real issues are not the N-word. The real issues are making sure that people can afford food, they have access to education. Like, these are the real problems, and that they're being treated fairly by the justice system. Like, these are the real issues. Like, the N-word is not... This is like a bullshit retard issue. It's like, it's like the Hail Hitler song. Like, this is a retard issue. Access to jobs? Yeah. Like, for example, right? And so, let's look at, like... And I'll give you an example, right? And so, there's, like, a much poorer area. And let's say it's dominated primarily by minorities, maybe not just black people, but just in general minorities. Well, these poorer areas generally have less stores in them because these stores get broken into a lot. And so a lot of upper middle class liberal white people like to get together and talk about how much all cops are bastards and how they want to defund the police. And they do defund the police, and it succeeds. And so the communities that are actually in the most dire need of the police now don't have the police. And because the police are defunded, so are the businesses, because the businesses can't make their money back because they're getting their stuff destroyed and stolen. So then you have the good businesses that are moving out of these areas that are underprivileged. And because of that, you have people that are in these areas that are looking for local jobs that now don't have access to them because of the second order effect of defunding the police. And this is the way that these things happen. Usually there are not, and this is the problem with discussing a lot of these issues. Food deserts are like, that's one example, but there's many examples of this. Womp womp, stop stealing. I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But do you know how you stop people from stealing? Is that you bring in more police, you arrest the people that are stealing, and then everybody else is happy. Look at El Salvador. Like, no matter how bad you think anywhere in America is, it's nothing compared to El Salvador. And he just took care of it. Arrest the criminals, and the problems go away. Wow, what a surprise. And it's not the people in El Salvador's fault. You can't blame the communities there. You can't blame them. These are gangs. These are people with guns. Like, they're going to attack your family. They're going to destroy your house. You need to hold the government accountable for not getting rid of these people. And so, and do you guys see how, you know, these again, you know, virtue signaling activist causes like defunding the police actually hurt these minority groups and create economic disadvantages down the line through a chain of events. That's why it's happening. And these problems do exist and they are real. But you can't talk about them because most people that are discussing these topics can't understand anything other than a direct cause and effect. People don't listen. Yeah, there's no silver bullet, but there's like 5 silver bullets or 10. Your assumption is wrong. Most police departments were not defunded. What happened is that many policing departments stopped policing in protest. Hiring more cops doesn't fix that. Okay, well then figure out why they're protesting and what they want and then fix that problem. Like the solution, oh, the police don't want to police. Oh, okay, well, let's just give up on the law. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
And now it's no longer about right or wrong anymore. It's about defending your group because it feels like our dignity and self-worth is on the line. So we react, we generalize, we moralize, we snap back, not because it's wise, but because it feels like survival. And when that sense of threat runs deep enough, people will justify almost anything to protect themselves. This is why we're now seeing people go so far as to openly defend violence and racism. Most of us feel like we're stuck between 2 bad options: stay silent and get streamlined by attacks on our race, or strike back and slowly become what we hate. Part of why we feel so stuck is because we're constantly being pulled by outrage and often only seeing one side of the story.
That's mainstream media. That's what mainstream media does. Very few people will give the commentary that I'm giving right now. Like, yeah, very few people will say that. I think you have your heart in the right place, but I think it's also naive to say that there's no systematic problem in the U.S. institutions. Well, I'm going to ask you, like, a question. Can you give me an example of a systematic problem? Give me an example of a systematic problem. And the issue is that, yeah, which law, what's an example of it, right? What do you mean nobody will? Everyone talks about how the media foments this racial divide. They do, but they only discuss it from one direction. They discuss how the media only makes black people look good, or how the media only makes white people look good, or vice versa. And so that's the issue. It's completely one-dimensional. It's that they provide half of what they should be saying without providing the other half. So, like, give me an example of something. Voter suppression, for example. What do you mean? Wait, what? How do you mean voter suppression? What do you mean by that, voter suppression? You're not going to make the argument that black people don't know how to get an ID, are you? Please don't make that argument. Oh, now he's quiet. Let him cook. We'll let him cook. We'll give him a minute. We have a, I mean, is this going to, I mean, like, we got to move on, man. Let's get this going, right? I mean, you're going to argue in chat. That's fine. But, like, you've got to have an example of, like, what you mean by this, right? I'll give it, like, 1 or 2 more, like 20 more seconds or so. And then I want to move on. The better argument is black people spend more time in jail. No, is that, what do you call it? The black people spend more time in jail for committing the same crimes as white counterparts. Yeah, but that's a I think that's a socioeconomic problem. Like, I think primarily that's a big reason for it. Like, and there's, like, a lot of overlap there too. That's not true. Well, it is true. So, and I'll give you a couple of examples here, right? Black households have a median income of $56,000 and white households have a median income of $59,000. And that's median, right? So, like, you're not counting, like, the super extremes of 89. Yeah, 89. Like, this is a huge amount. Oh, did I say 69? Yeah, that's a massive amount. That's not the point. There are studies that suggest black people in poorer neighborhoods are 80% doing drive-through voting. I don't understand, like, this is, I don't even get, like, that's, I don't even know what that means. By the way, so they have an ID because they're driving? Yeah, because you need a driver's license to drive? Uh-huh. Yeah.
And out of those, 37% of them are right-leaning and only 15% are left-leaning. And just take a look at how the bias is coming out and how they're reporting it. The right frames it as his parents being rewarded with $445,000 for his violence, while the left frames it as Carmelo raising the money to go into hiding after receiving so many death threats. The bias couldn't be more clear.
It's obvious.
And I also love the blind spot feed, which highlights how stories are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. For example, out of 34 sources, 0%, that's right, 0% of left-leaning sources have covered the fact that Planned Parenthood's annual report shows a rise in public funding and abortion. Ground News has become a valuable tool for me, especially as a Christian seeking truth and integrity in media. And if you want to try Ground News today, go to groundnews.com/whatdoyoumeme to get 40% off of unlimited access to the Vantage plan. So thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring this video. And now back to why outrage feels like it's the only option left and what it's quietly doing to us. So people are striking back at racism with racism, more threats of violence, and more moral compromise, letting their character erode in the name of defending themselves in this war. But if this is war, then what exactly does victory look like? Is it raising more money for your side, destroying the other person's reputation, or getting them fired? And will any of that actually force the other side to back down? Political voices have trained us to get louder, and we're rewarded for doing so with callousness or cruelty. They tell us that this is the only option left, that we tried to turn the other cheek, but it doesn't work because the other side is just too evil and wants us eliminated so that way they could destroy the country.
You hear this all the time.
But here's the catch. The more that we take their advice, the worse things get. The more that we scream, the less anyone listens. The more we retaliate, the more emboldened our enemies become. The more immoral that we act and justify it as a necessary evil, the more morally confused everyone gets. Just take a look around. Outrage isn't fixing anything, it's just creating new villains. And besides, yelling at people and shaming them won't change their mind anyway. In psychology, it's called psychological reactance, shows how aggressive tactics like shaming or yelling usually make people less likely to change their mind.
Wow, what a surprise. Screaming and yelling and bullying people doesn't get them to agree with you. I would have never guessed that. What a shock.
So as the cycle of reactiveness continues to grow, nobody feels more seen. Nobody feels more heard. No one feels more healed, and no one's desiring more peace because the problem isn't just a reaction. It's what we used to feel righteous, what we cling to when we feel unseen. It's about something that I call value makers. You see, we've all been distracted by these surface debates. But if you've ever thought, why does everything feel so personal now? Well, this is why. We as humans are painfully insecure. We're constantly searching for ways to feel more valuable, whether it's through success, intelligence, fitness.
That's why identity politics is so popular. It's because it's personal.
Relationships, beliefs, or even morality. The things that we subconsciously depend on to justify our sense of self-worth are what we can call value makers. We all have them, and they're usually good things, but they become dangerous when we treat them as foundational to who we are. We're constantly going to these value makers to tell us why we matter, and the easiest way to feel more valuable without even having to do anything is to look down on others who don't have what you believe makes you valuable.
Money or whatever.
If you're in shape, you'll feel better about yourself if you choose to look down on those who aren't in shape.
Stop eating! That's why you're fat!
In politics, we tell ourselves things like, I'm valuable because I'm on the right team, because I have the truth, because I'm more moral than they are.
The right side of history.
But when our identity is built on these things, we start seeing others as less because it helps us feel like we're more. And this habit, it becomes like a drug. We need more and more of it to keep our self-esteem intact. And today, one of the most powerful and fastest growing value makers is our racial or political tribe. It works because it promises instant meaning, instant moral clarity, and a ready-made enemy to look down on.
It's an easy way to immediately define a problem without having to think about it. And people appreciate that. They like that a lot.
Once you understand that, you start to see how racism and so much of the online outrage today isn't just about hate. It's about people desperately trying to feel valuable through their tribe. The only problem is, when your race or your group becomes your ultimate value maker, every insult to that group feels like a threat to the very foundation of who you are. That's why people go to extremes.
It's the logic of, if it can happen to them, it can happen to you.
because it feels like they're defending their very identity.
Yep.
But like virtually every other value maker, seeking comfort in your tribal identity won't make you more secure in who you are, but only more insecure. You'll crumble when your side loses, when your group gets mocked, when you don't feel affirmed. And when your identity is built on something that fragile, you'll always be on edge, always defensive.
I think that if you build your identity on something that you didn't earn, you're always going to have problems, and you will have issues just down the line with like 50 different things. And so what you're really seeing in these cases is that people that are defining themselves on things that they can't control and they don't have any ownership of, the only people that do that are losers. Losers and retards that don't have anything else going for them. So they take pride in things that they had no control over.
And today, everyone has a little bit of snowflake in them.
And then look at them. Snowflakes.
So I hope you can see by now, this isn't about politics or outrage. Fundamentally, it's about misplaced identity.
I think a lot of this misplaced identity, like this guy's talking about it from a Christian angle, and I think he's going to go there, but if he doesn't, I will. I think that people have replaced religion with identity politics and political dogma. And in place of religion, you see people embracing these types of extremist ideals, and they like adhere to them in the same way that people adhere to religion.
The problem isn't that we have value makers, it's that they become so foundational to our identity when they were never intended to be. They can't fully affirm your self-worth because they were never designed to. And as Christians, out of everyone, we should know this because of the gospel. You know that you truly internalize the gospel when you can know in your heart that Jesus didn't just die for you, he died for the very people who hate you, the people that you can't stand, the absolute worst racists in the world. You know that you've internalized the gospel if you know that, while also knowing that you're no more deserving of salvation than they are. And if that feels unjust when you look at them, it's because it is. It is unfair for him to offer them salvation. But it's also true when they look at you and believe that it's unfair for him to offer you salvation as well. You and your worst enemy are valuable because you were loved enough for the God of the universe to die for you. And not because you earned it, not because you deserve it, but only because he offered both of you his grace. And this is why the gospel takes away the illusion of self-superiority. If you truly believe in the message of salvation, then how could you possibly look down on the other team or feel superior to them because you found Jesus and you're saved? The truth is, you can't. And that's the kind of value maker that changes everything. It frees you from needing to win the argument just to feel okay. It frees you from the cycle of outrage because your value isn't up for debate anymore.
I think this is a, like, religion is like one component, and like if religion works for him, I think that's really good, and that's great for him, right? I know a lot of people that religion is an ordering force in their life and it improves their life. But I think it's like just a general kind of trend towards like cultural nihilism, and a degree where people just simply don't have any form of identity other than what they make up for themselves. And people have been divorced from like the tradition of their culture. They've been divorced from the religion of their culture, and they're kind of treated as this interchangeable business unit of like of a commodity. And I think that that's just not what people are.
You don't have to defend your race like your worth depends on it. You don't have to drag the other side down just to lift yourself up. Your identity is no longer built on the tribe, it's built on the cross. So yes, fight for justice, but don't fight like the world. Don't cling to your tribe like it's your salvation. It's not. This whole world and all of these worldly titles causing division are fading away. Jesus didn't die to save your race. He died to save your soul.
I mean, this is religion, but I think the real problem is the government. The government not adhering to the law and not enforcing the law accurately and treating people fairly is what causes these race wars. That's what really causes it to happen. Because, I mean, the fact is, like, religion helps. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of people in like, the Middle East, for example, are religious, and they've been fighting each other forever. So, like, it's not like religion solves the problem of, like, war, right? Because in a lot of cases, there's the spiritual and then there's the material. Where, like, a lot of these, like, wars that are fought on spiritual grounds are also about land.
Speak the truth.
You see what I'm saying?
Do it from a place of peace, not panic. From grace, not ego. From a secure identity, not a fragile one. Because in Christ, we were fully known and fully loved. you were worth dying for, and not because you had the right views or anything good that you've done, but because of who he is. And when that's your foundation, you can finally stop fighting for your value because it was already secured at the cross.
That's what I've always felt like with me, right? Is that's why I don't really like, I don't spend a lot of time like people like insult me or like they'll get mad at me or like be hostile to me. Is that like, I don't really think that it matters what those people say because like my own personal value is what really matters the most. And so like if I'm happy with what I'm doing and I'm satisfied with what I'm doing, then other people's perspective on it doesn't really make a difference. You can't compare Muslims with Christians. Of course, there's a war in the Middle East. Well, I mean, Christians have found ways to kill each other too, right? I mean, like Muslims don't have a monopoly on being crazy. You know, Christians, we've done that ourselves too. Like, I mean, I don't like, and that's the problem, right? I mean, just it's the dishonesty. That's the big issue.
For making it to the end of the video. It really does mean a lot, and it helps us in the algorithm. Now, if this video shook you, even just a little, it's because we're not just dealing with headlines. We're dealing with spiritual deception dressed as tribal loyalty. We make videos like this because we believe that Christians need clarity in a culture that's full of confusion and the courage to follow Christ without compromise. But creating this content takes hours of research, writing, editing, and planning, and right now, I'm doing most of it myself. And to keep up with what's happening in the world, and to go deeper without compromising truth or quality, I'm working to hire my first full-time member to help carry the load.
Good for
So
him.
if you've ever watched one of these videos and thought, man, more people need to hear this, supporting on Patreon is one of the most impactful ways that you can help make that happen. And if that's something that you want to help build, not just support, then I want to invite you to join me on Patreon. The link is down below in the description, and it really does help more than you probably realize. All right, so thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
I think one thing, if he ever sees this, is one really insightful and helpful thing for me is to have a Discord community. And that way I can have like a group of people that will like send things to me and give me insights that I wouldn't have naturally seen. And I think that definitely, like, if you have one person, that's good. But like, for example, like we have so many people, like, you know, we have like, for example, a mod that was in Serbia. And so like when they had those Serbian protests, like we got to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, right? And overall, I feel like there's a lot of ways, like the thing is, like, religion isn't going to be like the solution for everybody, I don't think. And I think that a lot of people, especially like kind of like people that have like my inclination, religion is like kind of it's a pretty tough pill to swallow. But I think that you can come to these same conclusions with like non-religious means, but it's harder to do. And I think that unless you really believe in it, the foundation for it is a lot more shaky. No one chooses what their parents are, what name they're born, their color, their skin, but they do choose how they act in life and the principles they stand by. Yeah, and that's why it's important to make sure that you focus on that, and that's what really matters about you, not anything else. But bro, how hard is it to live by causing no harm to others? It's actually very hard to do because there are oftentimes scarce resources. The root of all evil is not money, it's scarcity. Every single bad thing in the world is tied to scarcity. And so if you had a world, if you had a post-scarcity world, like theoretically, you would nearly eradicate all types of bad behavior. Well, like greed, well, no, but you don't understand. Like greed and envy are downstream from scarcity. You're greedy because you want a lot of things, because the amount of things that you have is contextualized. Scarcity is what contextualizes it. Envy is also the same thing. Scarcity is the root of all evil. Thanks for watching this video. A lot of dangerous rhetoric online, increasing for everyone. I think this was needed. MLK say every man is equal, and people tend to forget that as a black person. Thank you. Well, the thing is that, like, I think that's the way that most normal guys think. And I unironically think this is probably, maybe this is crazy, but I probably have, like, if you had an Asmongold, like, you know, fucking community meetup, and, like, everybody submitted their photos, we would probably have a more diverse group of viewers than almost any other community on the internet. I can almost guarantee you that. And like, I mean, at least among guys, right? We don't have a lot of girls that watch, okay? But like among guys, we absolutely do. And the reason why is because, yeah, except women. Yeah, there's no women, though. No, women are not allowed. No girls allowed. But besides the sausage fest, yes, definitely. But yeah, there's tons of different people from different places in the world, different ethnicities, different religions that watch. And I think it only becomes more the case Because I think that also, like, there's a lot of guys, for example, like, from India, you know, that they really appreciate the fact that, like, I didn't get on the train of, like, you know, oh, every H-1B1 is, like, an American job lost or whatever, and, you know, like, Indians are bad, and India's garbage. Like, I think a lot of them appreciated that, and I think it's the same as, like, black guys, I think have appreciated things that I've said before, and I think white guys have too, right? Because, like, I'll give the perspective of, like, a white person and try to be as fair as I can be. So, and I think the truth is that there are more guys like that than there are weirdos trying to, like, get everybody to get in fights on the internet.